What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? We are here, y'all. It is time. We are here and we are ready for it, baby. The start of college football. And we are previewing here today that first game at UConn in Storrs, Connecticut here on August 31st. And we got here with us two special guests here with us to help preview this game and give you, Wolfpack Nation, give our amazing followers a little bit of insight into terms of what to expect on August 31st. We got Mike Solomon here with the SSN UConn, and then Pete Calin as well with a former UConn football player, actually. So glad to, first of all, Pete, Mike, thank you both so much for joining us. Really do appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, a joy, man. I ran into Greg one day online. We were having, I think, some fun playing some ping pong, like the usual stuff you do on that you might do on Twitter. And then we suddenly said, hey, let's just stay in touch. We had a good, cool conversation, and glad we're here.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, I mean, first kind of, jumping right to it. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I mean, for me, this is it's crazy to think about that we are back, only a single digits away from college football being back, and specifically, both of our teams being back. So, I mean, kind of talk to me a little bit here, Pete, in terms of like what's the feelings right now, being in this final days of the preseason of college football.
I think everybody is just anxious for it to get started.
Yeah.
I think particularly there's a growing excitement around the team, growing statewide. A lot of hope has been placed back into the program because of the efforts of Jim Mora and his staff and the players. So there's a lot of optimism there that hasn't been there for a long time, and people are looking forward to it. Waiting to see what they're going to do. From a player standpoint, despite the massive success over the previous year and roughly the previous decade, it's good to hear that they're not satisfied. They don't think a 6-win season is quite enough, and so they're looking to achieve more. We're looking forward to what they're going to do on the field. So,
yeah, absolutely. And kind of jumping right into it, Mike, here a little bit. Talking about last year's game. I mean, I know everybody, is talking about, last year, but I think a lot of state fans, when you talk to them, automatically know that this is not the same UConn team that we saw last year, and this is definitely not the same UConn team we saw for the last 10 years before the Jim Mora era started. Where I think UConn only had 3 seasons where they won more than 4 games. Haven't had a winning record since 2010. Like, this is not that same team for sure. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz, especially last year with 2 big wins over Boston College at home, and then beating Liberty to get bowl eligible. So, kind of talk to me a little bit in terms of that NC State game. Let's kind of start from NC State, kind of work our way down the 2022 season. Going into that game, what would you say is maybe something? Because I mean, especially up until that point, like, UConn was going through a lot of really tough games. Going to Michigan, was really going through the wood chippers there. So, kind of talk to me about your thoughts thinking back, after that NC State game. What were the good, what were the bad?
Well, the one thing I might say is this, that in the first 9-10 years of our Division I existence, starting at 2002, going up to around 2011, 2012, we were good. We were a success story. We were in a BCS conference. We had gotten to 5 bowl games. We had 3 titles. It wasn't the strongest BCS conference, I'll acknowledge, but we had West Virginia, we had Boston College, Miami, with those kinds of schools, and we were beating them, and we got to a BCS bowl. We got to the Fiesta Bowl. So there was an excitement in the state, and the state was packing the rent, and things were good. And then our BCS conference collapsed, and we went into the AAC. We had some bad coaching hires. A lot of things fell apart for us. Go ahead.
Got to add also.
Sure.
What football program are you going to know is going to be successful when they go through 3 head coaches, 4 ADs, and 6 university presidents? So a lot of turnover in leadership, a lot of instability with direction for the program. So Just throwing that out there as well.
Yeah, so it was clearly a rough decade. I mean, we had one bowl bid under Bob Diaco, but generally speaking, the 2010s were a really tough period for us. We are
100%.
now at a different point with Mora, who culturally kind of broke us down to the studs and is building it up. I mean, there's an intensely strong brotherhood and culture. Mora mentioned, for example, there was no infighting at all this year. He said there wasn't even a fight on the field. He goes, they're all focused and going towards the same type of goals. So I think what's important this year is we fill the place and get the state excited again. I'm confident that can happen because we've done it before. We're the only real pro entity or real sports entity in the entire state. So I feel we can get the excitement going again. So coming in to answer your question, I didn't mean to kind of skirt around it, but I definitely believe that the NC State game is a very, very important game for this program. Now, we could bomb. We could make it really close. We might pull out an upset win. Who knows? But the thing is, there's a general excitement, and I think if we can come out and make it a compelling, competitive game and possibly win, I think it changes the calculus and the parameters that we look at for the rest of the season.
Well, and let me ask one thing to you, Pete, and then Greg, I'll let you chime in here. But I am curious. It's an interesting thing bringing in a coach that, or it's I guess the most preferred thing to bring in a coach who's working his way up, who's been successful at this place, got offered this job, moved up, was successful at that place, moved up, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now with Jim Mora, obviously being a former NFL coach, being at UCLA for many years, where he had 3 years where he was, winning 10 wins a season, was top 10 in the country, but then had 2 rough years, got let go. And then now he comes to UConn, after having, kind of a couple of years off. So, I mean, kind of tell me in terms of like, is there any kind of worry, even being, from as a former football player side that, it's kind of like you're hoping for a rebound, but it's like, well, if he kind of went downhill at UCLA, what makes you think he's going to be able to work his way back up in a very tough UConn landscape? Again, it hasn't been successful, at least to the level that they want to be, in a long time. Does that make sense, Pete?
I think it was important because he expressed he wanted to be there.
That's a good point.
That was important for the state. It was important for the players because all the circus and the chaos that happened the season before with the transition of coaches, they needed somebody to stabilize that program. And secondly, not only did he express a desire to be there, but he expressed to the players, hey, I want to see what you can do. He didn't automatically come in and cut everybody or whatever he thought was dead weight.
So you're saying he didn't do the Deion Sanders approach?
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, he gave everybody an opportunity to produce results, to prove their worth in terms of being there. And he gave them an open forum and open competition to do that. And as a player, they'll run through walls for you if they believe that you're giving them a shot and giving them a chance. So that's why
I love it.
That program and that brotherhood has amalgamated to what it is now. Those players have been through the worst in terms of college football experience, having a season canceled, the instability and leadership that they had, and to have someone come in and say, not only do I want to be here, but I want you to be a part of it. They were just eating their chops, and they're given an opportunity to grow and to make mistakes, not think they had to be perfect. So he was the perfect vibe and the perfect man for that time in getting things stable, in my opinion.
I love it. Great answer.
Yeah, I'd love to build on that a little bit, because when they hired him, he basically said, I'm not going to take over the coaching reins right now. He allowed the interim coach to actually run the program, and he stayed on the sidelines and just observed. And it was basically, I want to get to know the players. I want to get a feel for where we are as an organization. I want to find out culturally what we need to change, but also I want to build relationships with the existing players. Mm-hmm. So like he has a lot of wisdom. I mean, the man took 4 years off from coaching, was working at ESPN, and sort of had a chance to look at the best of all programs, and felt like he had so much more to give back to the game of football.
And I want to add, I think people undervalue that, because the only way you grow as a person and as a coach is to look inwardly and, basically to give of yourself.
Yeah.
And when players sense that, they'll run through walls for you. The problem is, sometimes in football culture, you're so engrossed in that competition where, things and all your actions, all your plans can be very, very self-centered, and it can be very hard to look in the mirror to see what works, what doesn't work in terms of establishing connection with players and establishing connection within the dynamics and frames that you want to establish as a head coach in a program. And sometimes time off like that can be a very valuable thing if a coach takes advantage of it to move on and to have greater success at the next stop if they decide to go forward. So it was the perfect storm, I think, for UConn, and I think for Jim Mora as well. Everything has come together and pushed forward the way it has.
Football coaches are A+++ personalities to begin with. What's fascinating about Mora, if you watch him speak, you see him at other types of events, and also from what I've heard from press conferences and from what the players say, there's a remarkable calmness about Jim Mora. There's just a deep maturity and a deep wisdom, obviously with his father, but also his years of coaching. And I think it's the right mix, the right personality formula or equation for a club like UConn. And in 1 year, I mean, we went from one win, which was an FBS win, to 6 wins, and then we went to a bowl game we lost. I think he looks at it as, I consider that a stepping stone. I don't consider that in anything close. He wants to win a national championship, and people may laugh, but people laughed at Jim Calhoun in 1985, and I was there when Jim Calhoun said, I believe the impossible is very possible, and I'm here to win a national championship. The man won 3. So now football and men's basketball are different, but Gino Auriemma moved in 1985 into an office with 2 other sports, women's volleyball and women's soccer, and didn't even have his own phone, and built probably the greatest women's basketball program of all time. I only say that because it can be done. And I think he can get us to what I call a P5 level. I think it's possible, but he engenders my belief. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Be careful, Mike. I'm pulling up the women's basketball card here. We'll get to that here a little bit. But
sure.
I was gonna poke the bear a little bit, man.
We're kind of decent in that sport. Yeah, we've got a little bit of history. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. We got, and we'll talk about here maybe as kind of a wrap up to part 1 here. But Greg, I want to bring you in. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I want to get into the game, man. Like, I'm ready for football.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flightlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout Eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flightlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flightlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flightlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out.
So let's talk a little bit about the offensive side. Pete, what position did you play at UConn, just out of curiosity?
I played all 4 defensive back positions at one point.
Cool.
Started at 3 of them at one point. Mostly safety my last years. Believe it or not, I was in the box as a strong safety. I'm not a big guy. I played at 5'9", 183.
Wow. We call him Tanner Engel. So we had a guy like that last year.
Yeah, I was matching up against tight ends at times. Yeah. They were, they still had 240, 260-pound tight ends back then when we played.
Sure.
and I finished up at Free
Gotcha.
last year. So
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
where I played.
So
But go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just wanted to talk about the offensive side of the ball because I think there's a lot of, you guys today just named your starting quarterback, which for anyone outside of the program might be a little bit surprised in that, but digging in for the research of the program once he was named, it kind of made sense because you guys have the same kind of situation that we did, where you brought in a new offensive coordinator and Nick Charles, who used to be the head coach at Maine, and his quarterback there was Joseph Fagano. I hope I'm saying his name right. We had the same
Fagnano.
thing with Fagano. Is that how you say it?
Fagnano.
Fagnano. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like our situation with Robert Anai and Brendan Armstrong in their time at UVA. But you had two starters there, and I'm going to say two starters because you had Roberson, the transfer in from Penn State, who unfortunately got injured in the first game last year against Utah State. And then you guys had Zion Turner, who was an electric freshman. Kind of just talk to us. Are you as a fan base, are you surprised at the way that this quarterback battle played out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I kind of am. And so in doing quick research when the decision came out today, 'cause I didn't want to sound too emotional, I went back and looked at games again. I just wanted to present it from a coaching standpoint. One thing I'll say Fagnano adds is, I think, a speed of execution to what the offense is. Didn't always agree or see that he made the best decisions all the time, but he made them and made them quickly. And I think that's one difference that I think it would see in the offense, and I think the way that Charlton wants to run things, comparatively speaking to how they had to go through, growing pains with Zion. To Zion's credit, he protected the ball very well. He did not make mistakes. He did not throw the ball away, and I think that was, pretty remarkable for a true freshman to perform the way he did in protecting the football, because it could have very easily been totally different.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the advantage, and that's the advantage that I think they think they have going into the first game, is the fact that, and looking at a game particularly against Boston College, he was threading the needle against some of those coverages and putting spots, putting the ball in spots in the intermediate areas, which was impressive. But yeah, we were a little bit surprised, and particularly when looking at the little sample that we did have with Taekwon in the same offense, to me it was electric, and I thought he might add that going in. So I'd be interested to see what the rationale is, if they want to share that. But Mauro's gotten us this far, so we got to trust his judgment and see how the chips fall and where they roll.
Well, especially too, I mean, being a guy, and Jim, who came from Maine, transferred from Maine to UConn, it's going to be interesting because, as you may know, Pete, for sure, is that, doing it, practicing is one thing, but actually doing it on the game field against an opponent that you haven't played against before is a completely different thing, with guys that you haven't played with together on a game field yet. And so, unfortunately for Jim, I'm sure obviously for us at NC State, we're very confident about our defense this year, led by Peyton Wilson, there are two corners, Aiden White and Shaheen Battle. So it's going to be a tough one, but it's an opportunity for him. If he wants to make a name for himself, really kind of plant that sphere, if he can, put up 28 points, on this defense, then win or lose, that says something for sure. I'll go ahead and say that right now. I guess that's going to be very impressive for sure. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. So, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, do you think if this game's on the road, he takes a different approach?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question, Craig.
I'll throw this out, Greg, and I'll let Pete answer too. There was some discussion that there may have been some minor tweaks to Roberson's arm. I had heard some of that out of some of the press conferences. I don't know if that had any effect on what happens next week or not. But that's a great question. You're really putting. They're different. They're obviously different quarterbacks. One's an RPO quarterback. The other one is more of a pocket guy, but he's tall. I mean, the thing about Fagnano is he's what 6'4" feet, something like
Yeah.
that. So
Mhm.
he's a big guy. He's more of a Tom Brady like kind of pocket quarterback, as I see him. Um, but he has more experience. I mean, even though he's
Sure.
been with an FBS program, he's been doing it for 4 or 5 years, whereas Roberson has really not had a full season under him. So
Right.
Yeah.
it's you know what? That's a flip of the coin, but that is a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I was surprised by it, to be honest with you, and I was really looking to.
Same.
I was really looking forward to Roberson's legs, you
Yeah.
know, and for the RPO kind of side. But they say Fagnano moves pretty well, so
He does. He actually does have some highlights of him running. Yeah, he's not a Matt Ryan
Statue.
running with the
Yeah, I was
football.
say
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead,
My,
Pete.
my concern would be, and Nick Charlton, if you're watching, forgive me, it's just an honest critique.
Okay.
If you're running a pro-type system, I would imagine you would want good decisions to be made consistently and a high targeting and completion percentage. And looking at Joe's stats, the only thing that concerns me is that, you know, it's below 60% at times. Touchdown to interception ratio, I will note, when Charlton was there, was pretty damn good. When he wasn't, it was about 2-1. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that, you know, Charlton, knowing his offense, can give a few hints here and there to help him operate better. The one thing I will note from my observations, and this is maybe my PTI coming in, the few clips I've seen of Roberson over the last 2 years, the one thing I like as a coach is every time he throws the ball, receivers aren't breaking stride. They're not switching body position. You know, they're catching the ball and they're continuing to run. He seems to be able to put the ball in placement in areas where they're supposed to be. You know, of course, Zion's learning to do that. Joe, you know, in practice, it looked like, you know, people had to turn, you know, a little bit, but, you know, watching games, especially the Boston College game, man, he's firing it. So, you know, I mean, he might be one of those guys that's just a gamer when he turns it on, when you know, when the lights are on. So, and that's something that Nick Charlton will probably know, some of those intangibles he knows about his guy coming from Maine. So, again, you know, it's their decision. It's just going to be interesting to see how it rolls out.
Sure.
Yeah.
the thing I will tell you is that in the spring game, Joe did not look good. But spring games are not really indicators of most anything.
No, not really.
They're vanilla.
They're for the fans. They're not really for anything coaching wise necessarily. I think.
Yeah, it's just a
coach don't put a
showcase.
ton of stock into it. It's more for the fans.
But he struggled, but I also think that that's probably an unfair set of criticisms against him, because who knows where the team was at that point. It'll be interesting. I was really looking forward to Charlton pulling out all the stops against North Carolina State in the first game, where your defense is still organizing itself and figuring out the speed of the game. But they may have other things in play, Greg. So who knows?
Yeah, for sure. True. Well, I mean, from everything, what little research I was able to pull up, it looks like you guys really rely on your running backs, on Rosa and Houston. You guys have brought in 4 transfers at wide receiver, trying to stabilize that position. Is that, you know, with this naming of the quarterback, you know, are you thinking more of a game manager, just not go out there and make mistakes, rely on your run, go play good defense, because that's kind of a staple of Jim Mora's teams?
I think, again, you know, looking at Fagnano behind the main line, when he had time, he was pretty good in the pocket. My question is going to be how he's going to perform it when things go off script, as they can often do, especially against a defense like North Carolina State. I live in Charlotte. I know how North Carolina State's been recruiting the state, and I know what kind of boys they got. They got some athletes. Last year's game, when we touch on it, I know we had problems, particularly with some of the nose guards getting, you know, pressure up the middle. And so I'd be interested to see how he reacts with off-script plays if and when those circumstances occur. But when he's in the pocket, you give him time, and we have a pretty good rated offensive line. I'll be interested to see what he does. I mean, he might surprise us for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
We're pretty excited about the offense, or I should say, I'm pretty excited about the offense. I feel like we're very deep at running back. We just brought in a guy named Jalen Mitchell from Louisville, who was he was their top running back a couple of years ago, then got injured and has had his struggles.
Very familiar with him.
I think he could be a real wild card for us. We have some speed. We have guys who run forward. We have guys who kind of are a little more lateral. Our wide receiver room is seemingly really deep for UConn. We'll see. We brought in a couple of guys from Austin Peay, who was the top guy from Austin Peay, but very quick. We got a guy from Delaware who's very fast and strong. We've got a couple of guys who were injured for the last couple of years who are coming back.
Yeah.
We feel like we have depth, and we're not like depending on freshmen to carry the load. We'll see. I will say this. I think our offensive line is probably one of the best in G5 and probably might be mid-level in Power 5. And we'll see. We have an All-American candidate there. Our weakness may be center at this point, and they may move our All-American to center to kind of cover that. But our offense, we feel pretty excited about. But it'll be interesting because our very first game is against a very physical, strong defense. Your defensive line is terrific. And it's like one of the things I kind of circled and said what we got to look for will be your defensive line versus our ability to create some holes and and push that line back for our running game to work.
Yeah. So we'll pause there, y'all, because I mean I definitely want to talk a little bit more in terms of that wide receiver depth, like you were talking about, Mike, and then talking a little bit about the defense as well. Talk some keys to the game, things like that from the UConn side. So Mike, I guess for your end, I want to kind of give you an opportunity to kind of plug in, if in-state fans want to check out any of your content, things like that. What would be the best way to see some of your stuff, Mike?
Sure. SSN _ UConn. It's part of the SSN network, but we're pretty civil there. Or I try to be civil as much as possible. I have some South Carolina women's basketball fans that come at us pretty hard at times.
I love that.
Yeah, really. I have Kansas fans now that are like coming at us like Star Wars, No, but we try to be pretty civil and just keep conversation going and create a little controversy for fun, But
yeah, sure.
I don't throw shade too often. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Except if it's Boston College. That might be.
I love it. And P, for anybody who wants to check you out as well, is there anything you would recommend?
I'm pretty new to social media, but I'm establishing
cool.
link on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. At P, my first initial, last name Calin 33. I like to add into Mike's feed whenever possible and a few other people and try to provide an intelligent add-on to the discussion. I don't always run my mouth about things. I kind of sit back and observe, but I try to make pertinent points when
we only run our mouth against Carolina, so we get it.
Yeah. And we'll make sure to add both the links to y'all's Twitter page in our description as well. But Wolfpack Nation. So make sure to tune in for part 2 here. As again, we continue talking about this game and talk some keys to the game. And we'll see y'all for part 2. And for us, make sure again, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that free notification bell, so that way you're notified whenever we release that episode. And also, if you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button. Also, make sure to give us a follow on Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. We'll see y'all for part 2 and go Pack, y'all.